Good evening, everybody. It is late on March the 8th, and I'm just going to go over a few things this evening. I was accused of being indifferent towards my neighbor for calling the Ukrainian conflict a distraction, and I'm just going to clarify that real quick. I do believe that it is being used as a distraction. I'm not saying that it was created as a distraction or anything like that. I'm saying it's being used as one because our media works very closely with our government to control, manipulate what they want us to see, think, believe, and hear, whatnot. And so on the tail end of the largest peaceful movement that the world has ever seen, once that had come to fruition and is now passed, not that it's finished, but its opening phases there in Ottawa and at the border blockades and such were dealt with. They wanted to have a new crisis for us all to focus on while the fallout and ramifications from that have slowly started to take place through the mandates dropping and that kind of thing, all the corruption coming to the forefront, whatnot. So they want to have everybody's attention over there because there's a few things going on in this continent and specifically this country they don't want us to be paying attention to. So things they do not want us to be paying attention to and are desperately trying to distract us from. In no particular order, the Pfizer documents that were released. I suggest you go over and have a gander at maybe the list of side effects and the known problems that have come from it, as well as its lack of effectiveness. It's all pretty nasty, and I suggest you go have a look-see at that. Another thing that's coming out is, well, you take a look at all the mandates are lifting and we're not dropping like flies and hospital rates are not going up. They're not any more overwhelmed. They have been for the past, 10 years while they were systematically disassembled and made less and less efficient, but that's beside the point. How about all the bills that are going through our House of Commons that have some potentially serious consequences? I'm going to read you a very short list, and it's about 20% of the list I actually have received. I think I'm going to put this list in the description of the video for your viewing pleasure and your researching opportunity. So Bill S-233, an act to develop a guaranteed livable basic income. Yes, guaranteed basic income in Canada. That's going through I believe it's going through the House right now, but you don't hear anything about that. And this is one of the first I have heard of it, actually, is this list here. So that's something to be distracted from. Sorry, continuing on. S-232, an act respecting the decriminalization of illegal controlled substances and drugs. Decriminalizing more drugs. That doesn't sound so good. Bill S-231, an act to amend the Criminal Code, Criminal Records Act, National Defense Act, and the DNA Database Act. I think all three of those sound like they require some further investigation. But anyways, that's another thing that they're trying to pull over our faces. Let's also talk about the fact that the People's Convoy is now surrounding Washington, D.C. But you don't hear anything about that. And in fact, if I didn't have a friend who was in a part of it, I probably wouldn't have heard anything about it because the news is not talking about it. So we have these major issues and things happening within our own country that we're not talking about because all of our eyes and all of our ears and all of our brain power is looking across the pond. And yes, it's a very serious conflict over there, but there's an awful lot of misinformation being spread about that as well. I suggest you guys have a little gander over at an Indian news company, like from India, WION News, W-I-O-N News. World is One News, I think is what the acronym actually stands for. And my wife found me an 8-minute long video. They were talking about NATO and the Warsaw Pact and what actually led up to this conflict, and if half what they're saying is true, then there's an awful lot of misdirection happening over there. So please have a look at that before we go jumping off of any bridges and jumping to any conclusions. So that is why I'm saying that I think Ukraine conflict over there is being used as a distraction, because there's a lot of things over here they do not want us to be paying attention to, so they're using another conflict to have us pay attention to. I think that Ukraine specifically was just kind of hand-picked because it was new and recent and large and flashy and people could have all kinds of sides to pick to it. But there are an awful lot of other conflicts going on in our world right now as well. If you jump on your favorite search engine, you will find that if you look up countries at war 2022, you'll find that there's an awfully long list of long-running conflicts with an awful lot of casualties that aren't getting any coverage. So there's tens of thousands of people dying every year in semi-preventable conflicts, but you don't hear about it. But only once we have a large movement come to pass in this country that they don't want us to be paying attention to, now suddenly things happening across the pond are really, really important, and they trump everything else that's happening across here. So yes, what's happening in Ukraine is very important. I've said that many times. I'm not trying to detract from that, but you need to make sure you divert enough attention to what's happening in your own country that you're not fooled by what's happening over there and miss what's happening on your own doorstep before it's too late. Thank you.